at least for another 6 months or so. She'd start wearing it before Christmas came around, she told herself. Bart hadn't replied by the time she'd reached his bedroom door, knocking politely, always mindful that her boy needed his privacy. He'd never brought a girl back for the night, not that Maggie would have minded if they'd been discreet, but Bart conducted his relationships elsewhere. He obviously had girlfriends. He was a good-looking lad. And that wasn't just the blur of seeing him through mummy goggles. At 6 foot, he was big enough to stand out, but not so tall that he attracted silly comments on the street. His father had been 6'4", and once threatened to deck a man who had somehow imagined that no one had ever asked her husband what the weather was like up there. Maggie's husband, God rest his soul, had been a decent man, but not blessed with looks, all sharp features and eyes closer together than suited the average face. She was the exact opposite. Broad, flat face, wide eyes, wide hips too, and getting wider by the year, she reminded herself. Perhaps their differences had endowed Bart with a sort of symmetrical, well-balanced face that wasn't exactly attention-grabbing, but with which no one could find a single fault. Great skin, even teeth, good bone structure, and a fair brain. He was in his final year of a business studies college course that he was hoping would offer a career in London. Plenty of work in Edinburgh, Maggie always told him, or Glasgow if he wanted to leave home. Anywhere in Scotland. But London was his dream. Always had been. Even that was too distant for her liking. But she knew that letting go was all part of the painful parenting experience. In the absence of a reply to her knocking, Maggie opened the door slowly, calling his name softly as she put a foot inside. The curtains were open and the bed was made. Nothing surprising there. His lectures started at 9 a.m. every day. He'd have left an hour ago to make sure he was in good time. Bart wasn't the sort of student who ever turned up late. But he hadn't woken her up. His normal routine was to wake, shower, have breakfast, clear up the kitchen, and to take her a cup of tea before leaving the house. She, in turn, would rise later, do the washing, shop, and leave something tasty in the slow cooker before going off for her shift, which started at lunchtime and went on until 8 p.m. Telesales was thankless, but they hadn't missed a mortgage payment yet. It wasn't the lack of a cup of tea that bothered Maggie. Her son was entitled to forget doing that for her. She counted her blessings on a daily basis for him, with or without his little kindnesses. What she couldn't understand was why his mobile was still sitting on his bed, charging, exactly where he'd left it the night before when he dashed out to grab an extra shift at the restaurant. Another waiter had called in sick. Bart had been offered the hours, and the thought of boosting his savings account was too tempting to refuse. The pay wasn't great, but the tips were, and he always attracted enough customer goodwill to make a night's work worthwhile. His phone had been running on empty, so he'd left it on his bed charging ready for the next morning. Maggie had watched him plug it in as she delivered a pile of freshly ironed clothes for him to put away. Those too were sitting patiently on the bed for his return. She squashed the stupid maternal panic that made the stable bedroom floor feel suddenly like quicksand. So her boy hadn't come home. Perhaps he'd met up with friends and gone for a drink, or had a better offer from a pretty girl. Only normally he'd have called her, however late. Let her know to put the chain on the door, tell her not to worry. Bart was thoughtful like that. His father had taught him well. Maggie took the stairs carefully and checked the answer phone on the landline. No message. She didn't have a mobile. It was just one more bill that she didn't need. Plastering an optimistic smile on her face, she popped her head through the door of the lounge, all ready to have a good laugh in case he'd had a few too many and slept on the couch. She was fooling no one with the false jollity, least of all herself. Bart wasn't an excessive drinker. He'd never reached a point where the couch looked like a better option than his own bed. Before she could stop it, her mind began conjuring the ghosts of accidents. Somewhere in there, a misadventure with a stake loomed large.